Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Brian Thatcher, and welcome to Mercy Unbound. It's a series that aims to provide hope, an avenue for healing, and one that will help you understand and then live the great mercy of God. With me today, I have a priest from the Diocese of Wichita, Kansas, and we're going to talk about a priest from his diocese who lived about 100 years ago, a tremendous heroic man. Father Eric Weldon is with us. I met him a couple months ago as I did a parish mission in his Church of the Sacred Heart in Colwich. If I remember correctly, Pilsen, Kansas is where Father Emil Kapaun was from, and we're going to talk about him today. First, I'm going to make sure that we got Father and I in view here. Father, there's some interesting things about Father Kapaun. Grew up in Pilsen, Kansas. He was born in 1916 on Holy Thursday, the day of the Last Supper and the evening when Jesus instituted the Eucharist. On All Saints' Day in 1950, his platoon was overrun by thousands of Chinese. He died as a prisoner of war on May 23rd, 1951. He was an Army chaplain, but he was a tremendous example of heroism and faith. He was awarded a Congressional Medal of Honor. And Pope John Paul declared him venerable, and he's hopefully on his way to canonization. You grew up in the area, you've studied Father Emil, and I grew up in the Midwest, a farm boy from Ohio. And when I was out your way, I really felt I was home. So I can kind of understand Father Kapaun in the sense he was just a great Midwestern man with deep faith. But can you tell us a little bit about what you understand the early days of Father Kapaun growing up and his parents and their faith?
Well, Emil was actually a simple, humble kid from a small family in Marion County of Czech descent in a Czech community up there in Pilsen, ergo the name, and the name of the church, St. John Nepomucene. This is where he grew up. So it's a beautiful church, still there, very active. And he made all his sacraments there. And, he was the kid who did his work on chores at home and then made it to mass in the morning to be an altar server, etc. And just kind of a healthy hayseed farm kid, And so that was just a good thing.
I had the pleasure of speaking in that parish probably 5-6 years ago, and I just kind of fell in love with the story. And the parishioners had made a rosary CD that we still have in the car we play, talking about Father Kapaun. On All Saints' Day, as I mentioned, his platoon was overrun by thousands of Chinese. I mean, they were overwhelmed. And he had the opportunity to escape. The men were saying, "Go, pull back, Father, go back." But he was running around. What do you know about that experience in the writings of the books and things?
Well, he was already known to go into the thick of battle, to really get out there and get beyond the perimeter, as it were, to get beyond the foxholes, to go out there and reach fellows who had been shot and to give them last rites or try to comfort them in their last moments of life. And so he really wanted to reach out to them. He wanted to, he was living his life as a Catholic chaplain in the Army in combat to the fullest extent that he could. And he just never thought of his own life. And he was highly respected by his fellow soldiers. I know it's kind of a testament to him, that is, they referred to him as being all priest, all man. And that's the plaque that's out there in Pilsen, Kansas, in the cemetery behind the church. And he just never stopped giving of himself for others, who desperately needed him in that hour of need.
So they get captured, and of course, many had been killed, but there was one gentleman I remember reading in the book, Herb Miller was his name. Didn't Father Kapaun carry him?
Oh, yeah. Right. Now, remember, it's All Saints' Day. So he had Mass that morning on All Saints' Day. That's the last day he ever celebrated Mass down here with us. Okay. So he celebrated Mass, and then he got captured. And so on that trek, when he's captured by the Chinese communists, they gathered all those soldiers and they marched them north to the Yalu River. That's where they're going. It's approximately 3 weeks, about 20 miles a day, living on nothing but a handful of birdseed or something like that, some millet, just ridiculous. It was bitter cold. It was terrible. Anybody who fell was usually shot, and they left them there on the side of the road, or they were forced to dig maybe, real simple graves. But there was one guy, like you mentioned, Herb Miller, right? And he fell and he injured and he hurt himself, and they were going to shoot him. And Father Capon, he takes the rifle and he pushes it away and he moves it away, which you would never do. I mean, they're just automatically going to get shot. And they did not shoot him at that moment. So he just pushed that away. And then he reached over and he grabbed Herb Miller and put him over his shoulder and carried him a long way. And it's just a testament to, unbelievable courage. I mean, it had to be spirit-filled physical strength, I
imagine that North Koreans didn't like him very well because he was such a beacon of hope.
Right. Why would anybody, give their life for anybody else when you're all going to die anyway? And they hated them. And here's a man whom they knew who he was. He just wasn't one of the soldiers. They knew he was a chaplain. And so to carry him down the road is it's huge. It's a great witness to them, not that they accepted or understood it.
It's the amazing thing is here's this guy, such a beacon of hope to these men. I mean, they talk about the weather was 30 to 50 degrees below zero, and they'd sleep together and they'd wake up, half of them were dead. And
right,
here we are living in this COVID time, and people are depressed, suicides, abuse, alcoholism, etc., are rampant. And yet Father, in all those difficulties, was such a beacon of hope. And I think that's a message for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you never know who you are until you're in the crucible. You don't know who you are until the food is gone, the water is short, and just the effectiveness, the body can't be taken care of. You don't know who you are and what you're made of until that moment. I've been tested a few times in those moments, and it's always, you learn new things about yourself. You're right. We're going without less. I mean, they went without less, obviously. No creature comforts at all. Utter misery, hell on earth, that he would describe it in the prisoner of war camp. No doubt about it. And in the age we live in now, I would say it's definitely true. We have less of a Christian identity in the nation. There's fewer people getting baptized. People do not know the Ten Commandments. They don't have a relationship with God through his son, Jesus Christ. And so there is just less strength now. There's less strength. And so people, I don't know what they cling to. And so if you take away, I guess, a class, a coffee shop, the last remaining human interaction you may have with a small handful of people, then, what helps keep you together? You got to have that source of strength keeping you together. And a lot of people don't seem to have that today.
I've had this little upper respiratory infection, not COVID, for a month, and it's just wearing me down. I'm thinking, this is like nothing compared to what this guy went through, and I'm thinking, I'm carrying a cross. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you're gonna go lay down on your bed with clean sheets, and maybe your wife give you a glass of water and aspirin, put it by the bed, and you're gonna get like maybe just 3.5 hours of sleep, and you're angry and you're upset with that. And here are these guys getting nothing and it's a slow death from the first moment they're captured until Capon dies on May 23rd. It's a slow death.
And you mentioned they didn't feed him much, did they?
No. Lord, no. No, it was terrible. I mean, just the handful of what could be compared to like birdseed. I mean, it wasn't oats, it wasn't barley, it wasn't even kernels of wheat, or rice. There was no rice. They didn't even give them that because the soldiers, their captors, they ate the rice. And I mean, that's how bad it was. And it just wasn't, you could barely eat it. You could barely digest it. And then that would just mess with your body.
I remember reading in one book, Father had an ability to make they'd get tin, they'd scraps of tin and find, and he'd make drinking cups, and he was able to carve them so it wouldn't leak water. And the other prisoners were always amazed at his things that he knew. It's kind of like reminding me of growing up on a farm, you improvise.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I wonder, you know, what kind of soldiers that we can have today compared to a nation that was at least 30 to 50%, if not more, agrarian. I mean, when you got a country boy like that who already is working very hard, doesn't come. I mean, there's no electric. I mean, there's not a lot of electricity, and certainly no air conditioning, and certainly no deluxe cars that we have today. You know, so when he's with those guys, they're improvising and they make little drinking cups. That's really. I mean, it just shows you do what you do what you can do at that moment. I thought you were going to say in the mornings he would get twigs and a couple of leaves or something like that, and he'd pour some hot water in there, and he would tell the guys he's got coffee. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Sense of humor, got a little coffee, joke around, stuff like that.
and he was good at that, wasn't he? He lifted their morale up and was a.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they knew he was the morale builder. They knew they had to go against him all the time. I mean, because he in their daily indoctrination, right? When they would just be harangued with communism, every day, he would speak up and defend, the dignity of the human person, freedom of religion, the rights that we have in the United States of America and the Bill of Rights and how they all come together. And he would talk about these freedoms, and they hated him for it. They hated him for it. So
I remember reading one part in the book where, here they're starving. There's not enough food to go around. And they're dying of starvation. And yet one time he must have confronted the officers and reminded them that the enlisted men get to eat first. And I thought, well, that's interesting because for the morale of the enlisted men, that was the way it should have been done. And everybody was just trying to stay alive. But he had to remind the officers that they weren't going to eat first, even though.
Well, it is tough. I mean, to maintain your presence, your bearing, and your presence of mind in the midst of of every single creature comfort you could have, the very food that sustains life has been stripped from you. And so then, what are you going to do? I mean, what's that going to do to you? How are you going to react? And, the officers always let the troops eat first. But, sometimes people forget it. Some of the guys were forgetting that, right? In the midst of that unbelievable, terrible living environment.
And it got incredibly cold. I mean, in Florida, I'm used to heat, and you're talking terrible cold, 30 to 50 degrees below zero.
Yeah, bone chilling. I mean, bone chilling, terrible cold that the only way to stay warm is to lay next to each other.
And then they may lay together, 10 men, and then they'd wake up and 5 of them would be frozen to death in the morning. That just had the mental.
Well, or you die because the will gives up. I mean, your will is gone, and that's what that will get you. I mean, because the human spirit has a resiliency that's just absolutely unbelievable. When you as a doctor, you've seen people, and I mean, as a priest, I've been in hospitals. I see people. I mean, this guy is still alive. I can't believe it. And the human person is a mystery, and a lot of it is the will, right? And a lot of it's relational, right? You'll see a beautiful relationship between a husband and a wife, and he dies, she goes in a month, or vice versa, or 6 months later, or something like that. And this is not uncommon. And so there's the mystery of the human person and what keeps you alive. And so there you are in that prisoner of war camp, and there's people that that did not make it because they just whatever it is inside of them switched off.
And maybe what allowed Father Kapaun to persevere too was I think he used to call the men his boys. So they were under his wing, in that same sense.
Right. Yeah. It was very affectionate. It's very affectionate, and it's very brotherly. You got the boys with me and everything like that. We're going to be fine. And because they were calling him Padre, they were calling him Father. The Catholics were, at least. or other guys would call him chaplain, and so it was a real sense of endearment going on.
And it wasn't just the Catholic soldiers, it was Protestant and atheists, and everybody else recognized his heroic virtues.
Even a few Muslims, So I mean, they're all recognizing the part that he's playing. For some, he is a priest, and for some, he is a good holy man, and for others, he's a great morale builder and a strong man. But everybody seemed to respect him.
I forget how he was injured. Was it just from the debilitation of the starvation, or he hurt his ankle or something and had a wound?
No, he developed a blood clot in his leg, which I think comes from frostbite, and lack of blood circulation and lack of movement. I think and then also no nutrition. I think that's what did it. I mean, if your life is about going under the wire and coming back with a radish in your cheek to share with somebody else a radish, which most people don't want on their salad, then, I mean, that's how bad it is. And it's not like they're eating any protein.
Then they used to try and escape or get out of the confines at night and look for any little kernels of corn or just anything on the ground. It was just...
Right, exactly. So all those things contribute to his health and to the blood clot hitting his leg. And
then they took him to what they called the hospital, but they all knew that wasn't the hospital, was it?
Right. Now, mind you, they tried to make an example of him, before that, by locking him up solitary, getting him away and everything like that, dealing with him head on, all those kinds of things happening. So especially in those conferences they would have every day, those indoctrination classes. But when he was finally spent, when he was gone, when the dysentery had got him and the blood clot was coming back and, the teeth are going away and he's becoming skin and bones. And they put him on that stretcher and they take him to the hospital. The communists want him to die away from everybody else. They don't want anybody gathered even around him when he dies. They know he's going to die. And then they do not want him giving any more hope to anybody.
What did he say to his men as he was leaving? Wasn't there a quote? You remember? Did he have a comment about, I've been working for this for many years and don't worry about me type thing?
Well, no, he's been planning on this for many years to get to heaven, and he was giving him blessings and he forgave his captors and they're taking him away. But you're going to have to refresh me on that.
Well, I was just thinking, what I remember reading was, he told his men, don't worry about me. I've been doing this for many years and I'm going to see Jesus soon. But
yeah,
talking about forgiving his captors, I bet that the Chinese and North Koreans didn't know how to react to that one.
Well, yeah, they wouldn't know what to do with forgive us for what, we don't care. I mean, we don't know why. They're completely divorced from, there's two different worldviews, two different planets, and they don't understand this Christianity at all. They don't understand this love, this action of even giving yourself in that way.
So he died on May 23rd, 1951. When the war ended, wasn't there a cross or something that the men had made, or share that with us?
There was a non-Catholic man, a Jewish man, I think, right, who made a cross out of the wood that they had in the compound, and he made that cross in honor of Father Kapaun, after he was dead.
And didn't they carry that over the bridge, I guess, from the north to the south? I think I remember reading that they, in reverence to Father Kapaun.
And they did, they brought it home, yeah.
Yeah. Didn't they find Father's remains some time ago?
Yeah, just within the last, was it this year or last year? It's got to be, I think it's this spring, they found his remains. They found it in the National Cemetery of the Pacific, which is in Hawaii, in what is colloquially called the Punch Bowl. And they found it there, and it was from a massive exchange of POWs and deceased soldiers from the Korean War between the North Koreans and us, United States, in 1953, 54, probably 54. And so we received these remains, and there was about over 700 of them, of the 4,000 or 5,000 that we were not, there's no identity. And so there was confusion about who they were. And to clean them up and everything like that, they used chemicals that at that time got rid of everything except bones and teeth. And we did not have the technology at that time to, or even up until the 1970s or 80s, to really understand the DNA. We thought we had washed it away, destroyed it. But we have new ways of developing the DNA and finding it. And so that's what they took care of in just recently.
Now, will his remains be brought back to Pilsen?
The remains are going to be brought back to Wichita.
Wichita.
And in Wichita, they're going to have memorial liturgies, Vespers liturgy at the cathedral, and then an enormous mass at a place called Hartman Arena. And then after that, we'll get to spend some time in Pilsen, and then the cathedral, and then this memorial mass, because he's never got to have a funeral mass, and then he will be interred at the cathedral. Yeah. Now here's a little interesting thing, just the way life is. Just things happen, right? So Kapaun, or Kapaun, because he calls himself both. With family, he's Kapaun, and with Americans or somewhere else, or with the family, they Americanized it and called themselves Kapaun. But when he went into the military, he called himself Kapaun. It's interesting. So anyway, he was in a body bag or some sort of bag, containing the remains, but it was identified with an Air Force officer. But it was, misnamed, of course, misidentified. And so when they checked that the bag of the supposedly Kapaun, they realized that it had wisdom teeth. And the thing is right before Kapaun went to combat in Korea, while he was in Japan waiting, he had his wisdom teeth removed. And so they looked in the other bag of this officer, Air Force officer, and he did not have his wisdom teeth. And so they knew that there was misrepresentation or misidentified. And so then with more DNA, and then matching that DNA with Father Kapaun's nephew, Ray, then you could get the match.
Huh.
That's just the weird thing about it. It's like, if he did not have his wisdom teeth removed, in 1950, before he is deployed, that's kind of wild.
Yeah, interesting story. Now,
Yeah.
Don't the people in Pilsen have a long walk every year in honor of Father?
Well, what it is I started this walk in 2009. I did it with about myself and my brother-in-law and two other guys. And so we did this 60 miles in 3 days because I thought, this is what Kapaun did for 2 weeks. This is what we could do in honor of him. It's a pilgrimage, and we're gonna try to love him and grow from this. And it was a challenging point in my life as a priest to grow, to mature, to heal. And so I did that with them, and it was a tough one, trust me, because you don't know what it's gonna. I reconned it many times, but you don't know really what it's going to be like emotionally. So we did 60 miles, about 58 to 60 miles in 3 days. It was tough.
And what are the dates of that again?
It always ends on the first Sunday in June.
Okay.
It always ends on the first Sunday in June.
First Sunday.
And so it's grown from 4 people to sometimes over 200.
Awesome.
But we lengthened it to 4 days. So 4 days makes it a little bit easier. You just have to camp out one more time.
I'm going to have to try and make that one of these times. I think that'd be awesome.
Well, we don't. Yeah, that'd be great. Stay healthy because we need a doctor.
Yeah. Now, Father, share with us, of course, in the process to beatification and canonization, you've got to have miracles. And in the books we talked, I read about the cures of Avery Gerlman and Nick de la Saga. Can you share a little bit with us on those cases, what you know? Or...
Well, I was personally involved with Avery Gerlman. She was a 7th grade girl in a parish in Wichita where I was the pastor. And she was real active, good kid, good student, and was real active playing soccer. And I think she was in a soccer tournament in southern Missouri, southwest Missouri. And while they're in the middle of the field, I mean, she doubles over and has some sort of an intestinal attack, coughing up blood, very bad. Get her out of there, put her in a hospital, I think in Springfield, and then bring her over to Wichita in a regular hospital room. And then they went from the regular hospital room. That's where I finally saw her, in that regular hospital room. And then they took her to intensive care, pediatric. And that's when she totally crashed. Lungs, kidneys, and they couldn't understand it. And so they induced a coma to try to control her and bring her to health. But her father, her parents are Sean and Melissa. Her father, Sean, documented every single day, everything that happened, everything that he prayed, everybody that prayed for Avery. And I, visited her again, obviously in the ICU, more than a few times, and really she was dying. She was going to die. There's nothing they could do. I mean, it's round the clock dialysis, breathing machine, induced coma. That's how bad it was. So I remember going up there and I prayed over her again. And every time I prayed, I would take the Father Capon card and I would hold the Father Capon card on her head. And I would say the Capon prayer. I would invoke his name. I would pray for her. Our Father, Hail Mary, glory be. Give her the anointing of the sick, praying for her. And I remember what happened was I went home and it was All Saints Day, like the next day. And I asked everybody at all the masses to pray for a girl in our parish named Avery who's going to die. And so it's All Saints Day. And, this is English and Spanish. This is everybody. I said, everybody, we're going to pray for this girl right now. And she's not going to make it unless it's God's will. And we did that on All Saints Day. And so then a couple days later, on the 3rd, I was able to get up to the hospital. So I was just making a routine, just to check, see how we're doing. And her dad said, well, something interesting has happened. She, of her own strength, has decided, or her body, she is breaking out of the coma. She's coming out of the coma of her own strength. And I said, when did the vital signs change? And he told me All Saints Day.
Praise the Lord.
So, oh my gosh, super powerful, super powerful. And so this is what happened. And so, it's wonderful. Now, meanwhile, doctors are saying, even if she comes out, she's got dialysis 2 times a week. She's not going to make it past her teen years. If she does, she's going to be in a wheelchair or in a bed. This is it. And so, I mean, each passing day or week, she's just getting better, getting stronger. It was incredible. So.
What a story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and within a year, she's playing soccer. It's astounding. And her doctors, the ICU specialists, family practice, all the doctors, they're testifying to this, especially the ICU specialists. They are actually speaking to the miracle of this.
Good. Now, I read a little bit, don't remember too much on Nick de la Saga. He was doing some sort of run, I guess, and his uncle was a cardiac doctor, and Nick had an arrest or something. Does that?
No. Oh gosh, we're a little convoluted. Nick, I know Nick's. Yeah, Nick. Nick had a really good, Nick's in this fun run. It's like a 5K or something like that. Okay.
Right.
And he's got, a nephew, no, excuse me, a cousin who's running and all sorts of stuff. And everybody knows each other and they're out there running and he's clipping along. And I think he's, probably within, I don't know, a few hundred yards of the finish line. And he collapses and he has a heart attack or something like that, or the heart stops, whatever. So I think it might be, somebody who's a doctor, a family member who is a doctor, and they're trying to take care of him. And then the ambulance shows up, and the ambulance medic is a friend of Nick's from high school, who has left the faith, who at that time had left the faith, and was still, in the ambulance and, was a paramedic. And so they're all taking care of Nick. And Nick de la Saga's cousin is observing all this. He's a younger fella. And he's praying for Nick the whole time, invoking Father Kapaun. And while in the ambulance, I think he comes to, or maybe a little later on. Nick knows better, but it's all through the prayer of his family relative, a cousin, and then also God working at that moment when others needed to see it.
Right.
And that's what needed to happen.
For me, it's also beautiful stories because we're asking for Father Kapaun to intercede and take it to the Lord. And it just shows our faith. We believe in the communion of saints, and we're all one big family.
Exactly, yeah.
People don't understand that concept, but boy, it's a beautiful thing. And got powerful intercessors like Father Kapaun. And any closing thoughts here, Father, before we close out today's show?
No, it's I would just say that we really need to remember that it is a family of faith. The communion of saints is one, heaven and earth together. And we're all living in the kingdom of God, the baptized, living God's will, and struggling to do that all the time, which is the big journey of life. And there are those who have gone before us who don't just model faith or were great examples, and yet they are also those who intercede for us. And Father Kapaun is that man. Father Kapaun, his miracles, Nick, I think, might be the oldest person, and he was in his 20s. He was the oldest person to have a miracle. Everybody else are younger than that. So it looks like Father Kapaun is really reaching out to the young. That's powerful. So I would just say that we need to continue to seek the intercession of Father Kapaun through whatever need you may have, and for God to bring him into the public cultus of saints in the Catholic Church, so that others may know what he has done and how he's given his life for us, for Christ, for us, so that he just did it in the way of loving God, loving neighbor that we have learned since we're children. And the world needs to know who Father Kapaun is. Wonderful. Our country, United States, needs Father Kapaun.
Right.
Kansas, so where we're from, needs Father Kapaun. We need that strength now. God raises up people in the midst of trial.
Well, Father, I want to thank you for joining me today on Mercy Unbound. People, I hope you enjoy the video. You can listen to the podcast at all the platforms or at drbrianthatcher.com. I hope you can join us next time on Mercy Unbound. And thanks again, Father. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video portion. The podcast can be heard at anchor.fm/drbrian, Bryan Thatcher, THATCHER, and on all the major podcast forums. I would love to speak at your church or conference, and please consider supporting our efforts to spread the truth to a hurting world. Thank you again, And for more information, go to the website at drbrianthatcher.com.